Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host Shwin and in this episode 299. I am joined as always by my co-host Stacy. That is at Stacy Patton 89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Are things on your end?
Things are good. Things are going great, and I am enjoying the time off from having to actively watch Knicks basketball and be very how should I say this? Very tied up in emotions of how the results turn out. I'm enjoying my time off from that. Before we get started, I do have to announce that Bet Online is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA playoffs. Bet Online is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs. From basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, golf to UFC and boxing. The fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your home. Get into the action today, so head to the website or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use our promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, to receive your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. Have to make a few more announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at thestrick.land. On Instagram, we are posting all kinds of new content on there all the time. Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, even water bottles on the website. Check that out. And finally, the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There is a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, aka the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Amico. That comes out every other week. The Strickland also has more stuff. We have a Discord, which you can get with that $6 tier subscription. There are further tiers. There is a $9 tier that gets you access to Stricken Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, the recap god, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with this. Yeah, a little piece of tangential Knicks, I guess not tangential, it's very direct. Knicks news dropping very shortly before we started this podcast. Carmelo Anthony officially retiring from the NBA. Played 19 years, obviously played many of those in New York. How many years? I think it was 7.5 in New York. So look, he had a great career, definite first ballot Hall of Famer. I want to throw this to you because I have actually quite strong thoughts on this. Does Carmelo Anthony deserve to have his number retired in New York?
I have a feeling we're going to disagree, but I think yes. One, let's be honest, over the last 25, 30 years, it's a pretty low bar. I mean, who else has been as successful, really? It's a short list. One of those players, I think, is on this team. Well, I guess in terms of career playoff success, I guess you'd include Randle. But I mean, did I think it was perfect? No, I 100% agree with. We've talked about this before, so not to put words in your mouth, but you have made the case that it would have been much better if Melo had waited to sign in free agency. And I agree. But how he came here, regardless of that, I thought he had some of his finest seasons here, won a scoring title. At a time when the Knicks were really in a bad place, he was part of the turnaround. Was he the driving force? Was he perfect? Maybe not. And I think that to the extent that that team underachieved, to the extent that maybe people hold him accountable to a higher standard, even, I would say that he was sandbagged by things that even were outside of his control, right? You can say that, well, him demanding to come and get his money and get the picks was a factor. And that's fair. But Amari Stoudemire's contract and him getting injured and that really anchoring the Knicks was kind of not his fault, right? Some of the coaching decisions, some of the personnel decisions around him were not his fault. Amnestying Chauncey Billups was probably not a good idea. So when you look at it in totality and you look at kind of the standard that's been set over the last 25 years, it's tough for me to say that Knicks shouldn't retire Melo's number because of the context around how he came here and how much the Knicks were struggling. I know you're going to mention that half season with Amari and Gallo and all of that, or a lot of people will. Sorry, I don't want to.
I don't care about that season. Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who say, well, what if we just rode that out? And my answer would be, Stoudemire's knees were taking time on. But if you look at, frankly, how poor they'd been before that and the amount of success they were able to have after that, he was a big part of that. He was the driving force of that. And again, the bar isn't that high given recent Knicks history. And I think that to the extent that you would have liked for them to do even better, a lot of that was out of his control. And the last thing I'll say is the Knicks were an elite offensive rebounding team this year. And that was in large part something that also came as a result of Carmelo Anthony. Because I believe the Oklahoma City pick that we received in return was used to pick Mitchell Robinson. So.
Yes, it was. Some would even argue that was maybe the finest moment of Carmelo's Knicks tenure.
Here it comes. I'm gonna enjoy this.
Yeah, retiring this guy's number would be fucking embarrassing, and it's not because he's not a Hall of Famer. It's not because he didn't have all NBA seasons in New York, All-Star seasons in New York. He did. He absolutely did. He's a great player. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. There's no question about it. I don't think all the lack of success he had in New York is just because of his flaws as a player. I don't think that it's all because he forced a trade to New York. But at the end of the day, like, you need to have more team success than we had. Like, we won one playoff series his entire time in New York. We made the playoffs in 2013. We made it for 3 straight years. The first 3 years, 2.5, I guess if you want to call it, that he was in New York, we made the playoffs. We didn't make it once after that. And yeah, it's not all on him. But like, when you're that guy, sorry, you need to carry the team way more than he did, to a level higher, I should say, than more often than he did.
Real quick, just one thing I want to add. So of everyone, these are the players who've had their jerseys retired by the Knicks. Bill Russell, the only non-Knick, Clyde, Dick Barnett, Earl Monroe, Dick McGuire, Willis Reed, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, Patrick Ewing, and Red Holzman. So besides Ewing, everyone had won at least one championship on that list, and Ewing obviously had a lot more success. So I just wanted to set the table that this is kind of what Shwin's getting at, and when I say low bar, it depends on how you're talking about it. So.
Yeah, I mean it's like the bar shouldn't change. The Knicks have sucked for a better part of 25 years, let's say, or more. Let's just say 20, right? I don't think that because the Knicks have sucked for the last 20 years that we go around saying like, well, if they just make a run at the 8th seed this year, that would be a great season. Like, yes, there are times where that would be an acceptable season, but nobody is saying that's the goal. The goal isn't like, oh, let's barely make the playoffs. Let's win one round. Hell, we've talked about this. We're probably going to talk about it later in the pod. Like, how frustrating it is that the Knicks didn't win their second round series this year, even though, like, objectively looking at it, zooming out, and I still feel this way, the Knicks had a great year. They had a very, very successful season. They should feel happy about it. But that doesn't mean that's the goal. The goal isn't just to get to the second round long term. And like that doesn't change, right? The goal is always to win a championship at some point. How does that my point is, like, Melo was the best player since Patrick Ewing, right? And that's fine. Like that's 100% true. There are weird, like, very, very strong analytics nerds that will tell you like Tyson Chandler was better, and they're fucking idiots. Because you just just absolutely not. But Melo was the best player the Knicks have had since Ewing. It's not particularly close right now. Maybe Jaylen Brunson will make a run at it. Who knows? I mean, the way he played this year, if he keeps that up, he will be there. But the point being is, like, I don't think Melo should get graded on a curve because the Knicks have sucked for 20 years. Like, I'm sorry. They brought you in explicitly not to suck. That was the point of trading for Melo, right? And yes, management fucked things up, but like, look at a guy like Dirk. Dirk had like shitty management. They fucked up a lot of things. They traded away a fucking 2-time MVP in his prime. in the middle of Dirk's prime.
Well, that was before Steve Nash became MVP.
Right, but that's what he became, and he was already he was a multiple All-Star when they traded him. Or they didn't even trade him; they just let him walk, right? So, like,
sounds like another point guard I know.
yeah, and it's like, look, I don't think Dirk, even if he didn't win a championship, I don't think anybody would be denying that like he deserves to go to the, his number retired, Hall of Famer, all that stuff. But they had more success. They made a finals after that. Like they made a finals that they lost in 2006 after Steve Nash left. Like they went to Western Conference Finals. They won.
They had a 67 win season.
Yeah, and lost in the first round. Yeah,
yeah, but like still, that's like that's more than
Yeah, and like I'm sorry, like Melo gave us one awesome season. I'm not saying like, and I'm not talking about individually. Individually, he gave us a lot of really good seasons, but we had one awesome season with Melo. One, his entire time doing the Windhorse. But like, it's just, I'm sorry, like to me, that's just not. I wouldn't retire his number. And like I'll put it this way: if the Knicks won a championship at some point in the '90s, a bunch of those guys probably would have gotten their numbers retired, even though they weren't Hall of Famers, right? Like you probably get Starks gets his number retired, maybe Mason, maybe Oakley, probably not Oakley as long as Dolan's alive. Maybe Houston, maybe Sprewell, whatever. But like multiple of those guys would get their number retired if they had won a championship, but they didn't. And like when you don't win a championship, the standard is like it needs to be high to me. Like if you're somebody that just doesn't care about jersey numbers being retired, like if you think, it should be something that is done for longtime servants to the organization who played really well, that's fine. To me, I think the standard should be higher. I think Ewing is the only deserving Knick since those 70s teams, and he did get his number retired. Like Bernard King.
That's who everyone compares Melo to.
And he didn't get his number retired. Julius Randle is running around in his number right now, like pissing himself in the playoffs, wearing Bernard King's numbers. And like I'm fine with that. Like Bernard King was awesome. He was amazing. He played like two awesome, amazing seasons in New York that are better than any of the seasons Melo had, quite frankly. And I'm not ever, and I think most fans, even the ones that grew up watching Bernard King, would tell you like it's not that big a deal that his number is not retired. I'm sorry, I'm sorry that Melo is this, and we talked about this in our Discord when the news dropped this morning, but like I think Melo means a lot to a lot of different people for a lot of reasons, like his aesthetics as a player. I think he was very culturally relevant in a way that is hard to verbalize at times. I think kind of it felt like he did bring New York back for a short period of time. He made us more relevant again on the broader NBA landscape. All that stuff matters, obviously. And I believe this is 100% true. That season, like 2012-13, that 54-win team that was so fun, I think that gave a lot of the younger fans kind of like a taste for what it's like when the Knicks are really good and how fun that is and how intoxicating it can be really as a fan. And Melo is obviously
just gotten a taste. They want the full load.
I know they do. Paul Pierce definitely does. But like I think that I get why, especially, fans younger than myself, younger generations really identify with Melo and really like cherish what he brought to the Knicks. But for me personally, like I don't look back on the Melo era fondly. Like I look back on, he gave us some really great moments for sure. Like the 50-point game he had in Miami where he had no points in the paint, like that is still like one of the most amazing things I've ever watched. It's a stunning performance. He obviously has 62 at the Garden. That's the building record.
There's the Bulls Easter game.
Yeah. Bulls Easter game. I mean, and he had that string of like 40-point games or whatever at the end of 2012-13. Like he did a lot of great things in New York. And I appreciate that. But like when you're talking about retiring a guy's number, to me that's like, are you a legend? Or did you do things that were legendary in New York? And like that doesn't need to mean winning a championship. Like Ewing didn't win a championship, but he had plenty of moments that were legendary in New York. And not just that, but he made us relevant for an entire decade. Like Ewing was the anchor of a team that made deep playoff runs consistently. Eastern Conference Finals, 2 finals appearances, whatever. There's a lot of stuff there. And not just that, but what he represented in terms of like, he wasn't always on the greatest of terms with the organization. He wasn't the easiest guy for fans to kind of like love and appreciate, but he left it all out there for a decade. I mean, look at you remember when he used to go sit on the sideline? There'd be like 17 pads that would come on, and he's like, when he'd have to come back in the game, he's unwrapping like 15 ice packs. And it's like that guy just gave you everything. And it's not to say Melo didn't, but I just don't think it's the same thing. And the team success is part of that. So, like, while I appreciate everything Melo did in New York, as in terms of the fact that he's played at a Hall of Fame caliber level, like, if we're going to be realistic about it, the caliber of player that gets in the Hall of Fame is pretty not like there are players. It's the Basketball Hall of Fame. This is the problem with the Hall of Fame. It's the Basketball Hall of Fame, not the NBA Hall of Fame. So the standards for guys getting in are so weird. And like for me personally, I think the standard should be a lot higher than it is in the NBA. Like, I know baseball is like the other extreme where it's like a bunch of like these fucking racist neocon writers like that won't let in black guys that did drugs that dudes in the 40s that were all white were doing. But like,
yeah, I mean, I think like if you're just going by NBA success, for example, Arvydas Sabonis wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Most would argue that
there's a lot of guys,
like, but he was an elite player due to other circumstances. He didn't get to show it at the NBA level, but most people would argue that it's a good thing that someone like Arvydas Sabonis can get in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think he was awesome. Like, I think Melo really was truly like an awesome talent, but I think this is the best way to put it. I don't ever look back on Ewing's time in New York, career in New York, whatever, and feel like if I have any what ifs about that time, it truly is just like, what if the Knicks, what if the Knicks ever got him like a true star guard or true star wing or something like that? With Melo, like, while those questions exist also, I will always be like, well, what if he just like wanted to play the 4 all the time? And like, what if he like tried on defense consistently? And what if there's a lot more individual
what if he just
questions?
Was willing to sign as a free agent, right?
Yeah, and like, I think there's just a lot more stuff like with him that is, it's a lot of like, I feel like with him, when you look back at his career, and it's crazy to say this because he did have a Hall of Fame career, I think people really give him a little bit of a pass, especially now, in terms of like, that guy had the talent and the skill set and the measurables. He's not going to be LeBron because LeBron is one of one, but like, he should have been in the conversation with somebody like Dwayne Wade in terms of second best guy in that class. He had all the talent to do it. And the fact that he's not in that conversation, it's not just about, well, he got stuck in New York and they had terrible management and this stuff. Like, it's not just that. There's way more to it. And a lot of that did just come out in New York and was on display in New York. And again, like, it's not all on him, but ultimately, like, I think he needs to shoulder more culpability for some of the shortcomings of those teams. And ultimately, to me, that means that he doesn't deserve to have his number retired by such a great and successful organization like the Knicks.
I hope if they do, it would be fun if they invited George Karl to the ceremony.
Oh God! So did you see him the other night?
No, was he on TV?
He was at the Nuggets game too. They showed him like they zoomed in. The guy looks like a fucking, like, it's like he's 3 steps away from calling it a good life.
Oh wow, that's well. Hopefully gets any help if he needs any help. Where would you rank Melo in that draft class?
So it's LeBron, obviously.
Darko Milicic.
Yeah, Darko. No, I think it's LeBron. It's Wade. The Bosh Melo thing is always so weird to me because my like gut instinct is to put Melo over him, but I always feel like the aesthetics of Melo, like, they count more often than Bosh's true impact. And I think people really forget.
He was a very underrated defender on those Heat teams.
And not just that, but I think people forget like how good Bosh was before he even got to Miami. Like, this was a guy that, he was a lot like Melo, to be honest, right? Like, he was the best player on a Raptors team that wasn't really going anywhere, but he was the best player on it. They had gone to the playoffs a few times. The guy was, you look at his numbers, he's like 20 and 10, multiple time All-Star, high efficiency. Like, the guy was a stud. And there's a reason why, like, they're called a big three. It's not just because he like got that, like, Love and Bosh get compared a lot. Bosh was way better to me. Like, I don't even think it's particularly close. And it's a hard thing to weigh, right? It's like, well, he was the third best player on 2 title teams in Miami. Is that better than I don't know. I think you can go either way. I'll just give it to Melo because I do think like the ceiling of Melo, at his best, I think his best was better than Bosh's best. But if you wanted to argue Bosh, I wouldn't hate that. But yeah, I think Melo is about third in that draft. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, which is and I would probably agree. Although I would add that like what makes Bosch even on the love point, I think that he elevated, especially on defense, what Spoelstra and what Wade and LeBron were able to do with some of the trapping and the aggressive schemes they played. He enabled a lot of that, and that's kind of a different contribution. But I mean that was probably one of the better top of draft classes of all time. So yeah, I mean, I definitely I think that the standard is pretty high. We can keep talking about Melo. I did want to quickly ask a trivia question to you. The Buffalo Bills have 3 jerseys retired of all time. Can you name them? Can you name all 3?
Bruce Smith, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas.
Yeah. Which all those guys made 4 Super Bowls in a row. So Shwin roots for organizations with pretty high standards when it comes to jersey retirements.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. To me, the Melo conversations, it's just one of those ones where maybe because I don't want to sound like a douche, but like if you, I think like for younger fans that didn't watch a consistently successful Knicks team, Melo gets like elevated in a way that I just can't get to because I did grow up watching like a successful Knicks team that was successful for a decade. And I've said this many times, like I'm actually always amazed by younger Knicks fans that are so loyal to the team because I'm like, your favorite memory is like we beat Boston in round 1 in 2013, and like
we made Donovan Mitchell cry.
That counts, no? Yeah, I mean, but like this, like that's kind of why this current thing feels better. Because it feels like this is the start of something, not the end of. We're not getting in at the end of something, sometimes we're not Tony Soprano here. We're not getting in at the end of something good. Feels like
actually, Matt Miranda in one of his recaps said, I think in the last recap, right? He said this is the end of the beginning. So, we have been witnessing the beginning of this for a while, but now it's it started. So it is. We are the train is at the flight is at cruising altitude now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, so I think with like the Melo thing to me is always just like and with younger fans I'm always amazed by it because it's like, for me I can be like, man, I remember the Knicks beating Miami multiple times in the playoffs. I can remember obviously the Larry Johnson shot. I can remember Allen Houston absolutely scrubbing the floor with Reggie Miller. I can remember the Knicks making the finals in '94. I can remember so many different like high points. And obviously there were low points. They lost series. They didn't win a championship. So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of lows too, but like I can remember a lot of highs. And I just think like with Melo's thing, it's like the highs with Melo, right? So many of them are just individual highs. They're not team highs. And I think when you're talking about retiring a player's number, there needs to be a lot more team success involved. And that goes to anybody. Like, you know, I am a Bills fan. Like, I know the Bills are really weird. They have like numbers retired, but they also do like the Ring of Fame or whatever. The Ring of Fame is mostly just like that's for a lot of guys, so it's like fan favorites and guys that were there and like the drought and shit. But like Fred Jackson was awesome in Buffalo. He played for many years in Buffalo, but like I would never want to see his number retired. Like I love Fred Jackson, but come on, like like the standard for that stuff needs to be way higher. Obviously, Melo in basketball is much. He's a totally different caliber than Fred Jackson in the NFL. But like the point is, like shady, like LaShawn McCoy. There you go, like a great.
So it's interesting you mentioned that because I just looked it up, and the Eagles do have a little bit. If you compare the threshold for the Bills, right? Some of the players like that haven't gotten named for the Bills, like McNabb had his jersey retired. There's a lot of fans that would probably argue it shouldn't be, right? They
No,
had
I think it should be. They actually had a lot of team success with McNabb.
he went one Super Bowl. So like
Yeah.
I'm saying that for the
Yeah.
Bills, it seems like that's one example where like I probably have like a little bit like I get both sides. Like there's no harm in honoring someone, right? Like Melo deserves to be treasured by the Knicks. Or I mean, it's okay to like have some disappointments of that era, like you do. But it's like I rarely see something wrong with honoring a guy in some way, unless it's like I don't think Miles Bridges should ever be positively remembered by any team. So like unless it's a situation like that, I think it's fine. But the guys who've been had there's like several on the Eagles who didn't McNabb only made one Super Bowl, right? I think he's a big reason I like was such a huge fan. But Jerome Brown from 87 to 91. It was a fun era, it was the Buddy Ryan era and all that, some great defenses. But my point I'm making is maybe we have different opinions on this because I think the Eagles probably have a slightly lower threshold for it than the Bills.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's different from team to team. I will say, like, it's funny because the Knicks have sucked, but like they have stayed. Like Dolan has been pretty. Like, I mean, it was people forget, but like it wasn't the whole like Ewing getting his number retired thing was weird when it happened, right? Because there was this whole thing of like, oh, Dolan and Ewing have like beef and whatever. Obviously, to Dolan's credit, he's actually like handled that pretty well, and I think Ewing's even talked about like he feels like he handled his exit poorly. And maybe he could have done more. And obviously, Dolan was a new owner then, whatever. But yeah, look, I think Melo, if you like, I just feel very strongly about that. But I also get the other side. It's just one of those things to me where it's like sometimes it's like you want something because you haven't had it in a long time, but maybe it's not really deserving. Like I don't know. But yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's move on from that conversation. So the both conference finals right now are 3-0. Looking like they're both over. Really. I mean, that Celtics game yesterday. Just what? Let's call it the Heat game. Let's start giving teams that are actually winning some credit here. I guess unfortunately, it has to be Miami. But I will say, between the lesser of two evils, while Miami is a greater historic rival for the Knicks, I personally just fucking hate the Celtics way more. As the city of Boston just deserves to be shit on. I've enjoyed that. But I do find that like
So a lot of people enjoy getting shitted on too. So
yes, that's true.
shout
But
out
like,
Odell Beckham.
but I feel like I've seen a lot of takeaways. I saw this after the Sixers series too, where they lost. But it seems like it's like, oh, like, well, yeah, we like makes it more likely we can get Joel Embiid. This makes it more likely we can get Jaylen Brown, and let's trade all this shit for this guy. And I'm like, I don't know, like I feel like that's the wrong takeaway from watching these playoffs and these
I mean,
series.
shouldn't the takeaway be like people it's a stars league, blah blah blah. Like, I mean, I guess like you can say, well, the 2-time MVP is going to make the other finals, but the Lakers had built a super team with LeBron and Anthony Davis, and it's fair to wonder if there were more balanced teams around LeBron, right? The kind that are having success. And you look at all of like the super team in Phoenix flamed out, right? We'll see if they recover next year. I think the takeaway should absolutely be, I don't know if this is exactly the direction you're heading from, but like the whole extremely top heavy because stars matter thing is a little, and that's not to say that Jimmy isn't a legitimate star. That's not to say that Bam isn't a very good number two and a two-way player. But the Celtics were
isn't the takeaway that like they didn't mortgage anything to get those guys?
Butler.
Like, yeah, like they traded Josh Richardson.
He's on a tough contract. That's the thing.
Right. But I'm saying they didn't. Yeah. But to actually get him in Miami, they didn't give up anything.
They didn't trade. That's where you didn't trade a lot.
They gave up Josh Richardson. Cool. Bam, they drafted. And actually, like, look, I know it's very fun to shit on Boston, but like, let's zoom out. Let's let's get to where we were with Boston before the series started, right? There are concerns about Missoula and Jaylen Brown. Does he deserve the money? Whatever. But I don't think anybody would have looked at that team and been like they've done something fundamentally wrong in building this team. And I think if anything, they are an example of like the value of depth, the value of patience, the value of, and that doesn't mean it's always going to result in a championship, but they've had a long fucking run here, like they've had a long run of success with that team, which speaks to like, and they haven't, they haven't cashed in a bunch. And I've criticized them at times for that too. Like I think there's a plus and a downside to that, but
Trader
they've,
Danny, right?
yeah, but they've been a deep team now for a while, and that depth has paid off at various times. Maybe not in a championship, but how many Eastern Conference Finals have they been to? Right, like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. These guys have basically been living in the Eastern Conference Finals since they got drafted. They made a Finals appearance last year. They probably should have won that series if Steph doesn't go nuclear. But like that's Steph. So like I think I want to throw this at you because this is where I'm at. As somebody who has argued against trading for like every fucking star that's ever been named. I think you ultimately do need an MVP caliber guy. And I know Jimmy's a weird discussion, but like we know that in the playoffs, Jimmy becomes that guy. Maybe he's not that guy in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he becomes at that level. Like I think you do need one of those guys, but if you do that while adopting the kind of like big three mentality, cash in your chips type of thing, I think that doesn't work either. I think you need to get that guy, but you need to be able to retain depth, and not just depth, but flexibility. And going into this new CBA, I think that's more important than ever because you look at the restrictions placed on teams. Once they exceed that second tax apron, it's brutal. You can't aggregate salaries in trade. You can't take on more salary in a trade than you're sending out. Like the draft pick thing, I think it's like if you're in the second apron, your pick automatically goes to like the end of the round or something like that. The first, like there's some brutal restrictions. The buyout market doesn't exist. Buyout market, which is actually probably one of the best things they've done. Just the buyout market does not exist for contenders anymore after the trade deadline. That's a huge one. Like you have all of these very restrictive measures put in place. If you're talking about gutting everything for a guy like Joel Embiid or Jaylen Brown or something, and I do mean gutting everything. Like I think if you're trading for Joel Embiid specifically, right?
They're not letting him go for
yeah, and you're talking about a trade package that's probably somewhere on the around what Phoenix gave up for KD, right? And so if you look back at what Phoenix gave up, they gave up all their draft capital, they gave up a pick swap, they gave up Cam Johnson, and they gave up Mikal Bridges. Like I know I've made fun of Mikal Bridges, but like those are like two really good at
you're giving up RJ quickly or RJ and Grimes.
Yeah, something like that, something along those lines. And it's like I don't like that. I'm sorry. I just think like if I'm doing that trade, it needs to be like Nikola Jokic or Giannis or like it needs to be something like that. It cannot be Joel Embiid who can't get out of the fucking second round and quite frankly has underperformed in playoff series against quality opposition.
Yeah. I'll going back to the kind of Heat discussion. There is another element here. So, who do you think are like the three teams with maybe the least top end talent? There's three teams I think of when I think of like maybe not quite the top end talent that some of the other teams have had in recent memory. One, I think Dirk Nowitzki was an MVP caliber player even at that time, but it wasn't when they won. I wouldn't have considered him. I don't think he was peak Dirk. Would you agree with that?
Say that again.
When Dallas won the championship, I think Dirk was still an MVP caliber player. He was not like at his peak. I think he was one of the top 2 or 3 players in the league. I think at that time he was closer to the 5 to 10 range. I don't think like he was at his peak when they won.
Dirk. I would say he wasn't at his peak, but during that run, he dialed it up. Like, and I think that's kind of the Jimmy thing, right? Where it's like he's not the best guy in the league, but he can dial it up in the playoffs to the point where you're like, is he the best guy in the league? like that's kind of where I'm at right now.
But also, Dirk's number 2 was like Jason Terry, or an amalgamation of Jason Terry, Sean Marion, and Jason Kidd. there's another factor there, right?
Yeah,
Rick
Gabe Terry
Carlisle.
out here.
But it's also Rick Carlisle, right? He was a big factor in that. The other team that won without an MVP candidate was, I mean, Kawhi was not unleashed in that way yet, was probably the 2014 Spurs. Um, they had who many consider to be the greatest coach of all time. So I think that you're also seeing, I think Mike Malone, personally, I've always thought he's a pretty underrated coach. I think one of the most baffling decisions to me was, and probably one of the worst decisions Vivek has made, which is a very high bar, was letting him go when he was the first coach who really got through and was able to get more out of DeMarcus Cousins. And DeMarcus Cousins himself has said that, he was disappointed at that firing. So I think that we're seeing the value of playoffs, and I think you absolutely have to, like Prez said this in the Discord, that like Jimmy is just, or maybe he was on like on a Twitter thread, but he was like, Jimmy is just really good at like this, like knowing every like little inch he can exploit on the court. That's why him and Spoelstra are such an annoying combo. Like in the macro game, they both see everything, right? It's like they haven't won that in this level yet, but it probably is some of the same kind of synergistic tendencies that you saw from Belichick and Brady, right? And don't worry, I threw up in my mouth on both ends of that a little bit. But
Pause.
Wow. Yeah, no, sorry. I don't. Everything's okay on the other end. But I think that it's two things, and I definitely want to ask this because with the new CBA, I haven't looked into it as much as you have, and in general, like the cap has just been not my thing. I know you know a lot more about the cap than me. There's two questions. There's another question I've had because like I think you can take away and you can say, well, look, one, the league is going to get flatter, or teams are going to get flatter, I should say, and you're not going to have these super team things. But the other thing is this, right? And people have mentioned, no team has won with their best player being sub 6'2" or sub 6'3", or Steph is besides Isaiah Thomas and Steph Curry, right? Here's the thing, though, and because I've thought about this, the difference I think between Brunson and a lot of those caliber of guards is that he's on a very good deal, and it's descending. And I guess the question I'm setting up is, given the new CBA and given the contract Brunson's on, and the window that gives you where you like have some space and some flexibility, does that kind of accelerate your decision making? And two, you're talking about the new CBA, but with Begley was saying that he thinks it's more likely that because of the new CBA, they have this 1 year kind of grace period where they can do that. So one, is Brunson being on a good contract kind of make that window extremely important to like, to accelerate the kind of the timeline? And two, what do it sounds like you completely disagree on the implications of like this 1 year gap and what Begley was saying and why he expects there to be a move.
Yeah, so I think with the Brunson part of it, like I get it. He's on this awesome contract. You want to try to cash in. You should try to cash in when like you have that advantage, but you can't force it. Like you can't want again, like you can't want something so bad that you lower your standard, like the Carmelo Anthony thing. No, but like
2 a.m. at Rick's, right?
yeah, exactly. Like yeah, like don't be that guy at the bar. But no, for real. Like I think the Knicks should be like look at what it says underneath my name. The Knicks should be patient but not inactive. Like let the opportunities come to you. If you think like I disagree with this, right? But if they believe, right, they look at the situation, they're like, you know what, getting Joel Embiid is worth giving up the goods. Let's say like that's if that's what they believe, then they should do it. Like they should do that trade if they believe that. But that the standard should like you need to make those trades, that type of trade, with the
On its
idea
own
that
merits.
yeah, on its own merits, and it needs to be of the belief that like this move makes us a contender. Like and that's why they didn't make the Donovan Mitchell trade last year. They wanted Donovan Mitchell. They think I'm sure they think he's a star, maybe even a superstar. But they also were cognizant of the fact, hey, look, if we give up what Ainge wants us to give up to get this guy, then we don't have the juice to go get the other necessary piece, the other necessary player, to take us over the top. And that's what they need to weigh. It's not like the question isn't like, and this is what people, I hate having this conversation with people when they twist it like this, but it's like the conversation isn't Is Joel Embiid an awesome player? Is Jaylen Brown a fucking awesome player? No, they are both very, very good players. We can debate how good or whatever.
Or the more annoying even corollary to that people bring up is like, oh, so you think RJ Barrett's better, like will ever be better than Jaylen Brown, or you think that Quentin Grimes will ever be better than Donovan Mitchell? It's like that's not the conversation we're having here.
Yeah, it's not a 1-for-1 thing. And obviously there's an opportunity cost to making trades. And so like to me, I mean, like honestly, I hate bringing this back to Melo, but it's like if people remember back to when the Knicks traded for Carmelo, the next summer, right? So after the lockout happens, that's when Chris Paul gets traded to the Clippers. And I personally think it's wrong to criticize them for trading for Melo under the later discovery that Chris Paul was on the move too. But like the idea is, hey, if you didn't cash in your chips for Melo, who's to say you couldn't have cashed in your chips for Chris Paul, and would that have been better? I don't fucking like Chris Paul, so I don't care. But like it's that type of conversation, right? Where it's like, yeah, you can cash in your chips for Jaylen Brown, but who's to say in a year from now, what if Jason Tatum's suddenly available on the market? Like what if I'm thinking, like, what if for some reason Anthony Edwards is on the market? What if
Who did Windhorst say the Knicks had their eyes on?
I don't actually even remember. Giannis.
Giannis.
Yeah, Giannis. Yeah, but like if these guys suddenly become available on the market and you already cashed in your chips for Jaylen Brown, how do you feel about that? And so like I think personally, you have to, like you said, judge every move on its own merits, not on like what you want it to be, or oh well, Brunson's on this awesome contract for the next 2 years. We have to cash in our chips during that time. Like you should want to cash in during that time. But if the right move doesn't come along, just making a move for the sake of it is bad. That's bad business. And then to answer your second part of the question, like I think what Begley is saying is right in terms of I think there are a lot of teams that are viewing it as, hey, we have this year to make moves under a less restrictive cap, less restrictive CBA. We should take advantage of that, and then we'll deal with the consequences when the new CBA kicks in. To me, that's like, we've all seen The Big Short, I'm sure, by this time. We're all familiar with what happened then. Goldman Sachs, fucking Bear Stearns, who went under, and like all these banks, right? They were selling subprime mortgages still until like 2006, 2007. They knew they sucked, and they knew that the bill was going to come due, but they still did it because the cash up front that they were getting was so good. Isn't this the same exact fucking concept where it's like, man, I know that in 2 years, this is going to really, really fucking kill us in terms of building a team, and we might not be able to retain all these players, and we might actually literally not be able to make trades because it's going to be impossible for us. But man, for the next 2 years, it could be really fun. I could win a lot of basketball games. Maybe we'll get lucky, make a finals.
You do sound like a cocaine binged Wall Street banker right now in that voice.
But like that's what it is. Like I think that he's right, that is how teams are viewing it. I totally reject it. I think the best thing the Knicks can do, which is funny because we're talking about we earlier talked about a team that is down 3-0, but I like the concept of them trying to make a move more akin to what the Celtics did last summer in getting Malcolm Brogdon, where it's like, is that a superstar piece? No, but it adds something to your roster. It's another
second best six man in the league.
Yeah, second best six man in the league. It adds another quality rotation piece, another quality player, really, like a guy that can start, right? Obviously, he didn't start this year at all, but like we know he's capable of starting, and we know what he can do on the floor. Like, if there's a move like that that's available, I think the Knicks should pursue it. I tweeted this. I don't know. I think it was Saturday, maybe. But like, and I muted the tweet because all the replies were. I could already tell they were going to get annoying. So if you responded to it and I didn't reply, sorry. But I was like, if the Knicks can take they have this Evan Fournier expiring contract, right? If you can trade him to San Antonio with some of your protected first for Keldon Johnson, is that a perfect move? No. Like Keldon Johnson isn't a particularly great shooter. He's not a high volume shooter. But I do think like just getting another quality rotation piece, a wing, a guy that's locked in under contract for the next 2 or 3 years, I believe, on a descending deal. Like maybe the Spurs wouldn't want to do that. But we've seen the Spurs get ahead of a trade market before, right? They traded DeJounte Murray before a lot of teams would have traded him, and they cashed in and they got good value for him.
Well, even the George Hill move, there were
Yeah.
people who thought that they might pick him over Tony Parker because he really played well when Parker was hurt. So
I think he had a good
obviously that's
playoffs before that too.
yeah, and obviously they got ahead of that, and obviously became a huge move for
Right.
them. But yeah,
And so maybe that's not enough value for them to trade Keldon, but like that's the type of move where it's like taking this dead salary that means nothing to you, using some of these protected firsts you got. What is the best player you can get for that? I'm interested to find out what that move is, and that's the move I'm interested in making. I am not interested in cashing in all my chips for Joel Embiid. And for what it's worth, I think this whole Joel Embiid thing, at least this summer, is bullshit. Like I don't see Daryl Morey trading Joel Embiid this offseason. I don't see Joel Embiid demanding a trade this offseason. And we also know that if there's one guy that's proven he doesn't give a shit if you've demanded a trade, he's not going to make a trade until he thinks it makes sense for him. It's Daryl Morey. So I don't think that's even happening this offseason. The Jaylen Brown thing, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know. Have you been watching this series?
yeah,
I think Jaylen Brown is a really good player. I have always disagreed. Like, I'm sorry. Like, he's not a number one guy. And you could say, well, we don't need a number one guy. But like, if you've been watching him during this playoff run, it's not just about what you have to trade to get him. It's also the fact that he's on the hook for this huge contract he's going to get. Even like if he got traded to the Knicks, it wouldn't be the super max. But I think his max is still going to be like something like 5 years, 240 or something. And I get it. The cap is going to this different place and these contracts. I get all that. I don't love Jaylen Brown at that number. I especially don't love Jaylen Brown at that number when I have to give up value to get him. And I'm probably going to have to give up quite a bit of value. Now, if you told me the trade was just something like RJ and like 2 firsts or something like that, or like Quickly and Fournier's expiring and a couple of picks, like those are all trades that I think you maybe can, or you definitely can make, and maybe you definitely should make. But like those are very different value propositions than what I expect a Jaylen Brown trade to run you. Like if we use the DeJounte Murray trade as kind of like some baseline, he's way
and I think
better.
Jalen, yeah,
He's way better. He's a more flexible piece because of his ability to play on and off ball. He's a more
Dejounte
valuable
Murray wasn't done. Was he? How many years did he have left on his contract?
2.
Okay, so this is a little bit different than that, right?
A little bit different, but I still think like the fact that he's viewed as a much better player, fairly and rightfully, he is a much better player. But the fact he's viewed as such, I think the value is going to be way more than that. And presumably, I think any team trading for him would probably do it having back channeled with an understanding and knowing that, like, yeah, look, if we trade for him, he'll stay here. We'll sign him, and it won't be a big deal. Maybe I'm wrong on that assumption, but like, I don't think any team is going to trade for him without doing that. But I think somebody will have that feeling and will give up a lot of value to get him. And I've mentioned this. I did this pod last week with Troll Bro dude, Philly Sixers fan, but like, I really think that this Houston offseason could be a fucking shit show. Where like we look back at it in 2 years and we're like, what the fuck did they do? Like I could see them, the maxing Harden thing. I think that's totally on the table, maybe even likely. And then it's like, they have the 4th pick, right? Like the 4th pick and fucking,
I think it's the second, don't they? No, it's
is
Charlotte's the
it?
second.
Yeah.
So sorry, they
Yeah.
are the 4th. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be like 4 and like Jabari Smith Jr. and some other fucking contract for Jaylen Brown to like appease Harden. And I could see it, like I could totally see looking back at that deal, in a couple of years being like, what the fuck was that?
And I know exactly who Boston would take. Boston would take a guy named Jarace Walker, and 3 years later, it looked like an amazing trade.
Yeah, and like Jabari Smith didn't have a great rookie year, but I do think like there's something there. It's not like he's just out there looking.
He's
like
a 6'10" shooter with great mobility and defensive instincts. Like that's a high floor. It's just Paolo's look like a creator off the bat, and that's just tough to.
But yeah, but to the point is like Jaylen Brown's going to get moved for real value, and if they move him, but like, yeah, I just again like I always go back to this, but like if you don't ever want to be in a position in anything, like yes, in NBA trade market, but also in life, where you don't have options, where you don't have pivots, where you don't have any other way you can do something. And I'm just always hesitant to pull the trigger on those trades. And I think the Knicks are like, I think it's The wrong thing, like I've said that, and I still believe this. Actually, I feel even more strongly about this now. That like the Knicks can't. They're not going to win a championship as long as Randle is on the roster. I just think there's a ceiling to that team. And I would have moved on from Tibbs. I don't think the Knicks they're not going to move on from Tibbs. And I think it's hard to find a good value trade for Randle. Does that mean that they shouldn't try to improve the roster? No, I think they absolutely should. But I'd be very weary of if your plan is let's trade everything, or if you think let's trade everything for Joel Embiid and our big three of Brunson, Randall, and Embiid. I'm very, very wary of that roster construction. And I personally am just more along the lines of keep moving on the margins right now, keep improving your rotation, keep improving your depth, and see what shakes out in a year, 2 years from now when the new CBA is fully kind of set in. And I expect the market for stars, trade market for stars, to be totally different from what it is right now, because the market for stars right now is untenable. It's literally just give us everything that you can, and that is the trade. Like every star, that's the trade. Donovan Mitchell, that was the trade. Joel Embiid, Joel Embiid. Kevin Durant, that was the trade. Fucking Rudy Gobert, that was the trade. Like that is the trade now. And I don't think the precedence of those moves and the success of those moves has been there to justify that outlay, regardless of how good the players are. All these players we're talking about are great players. They're all stars. They're all NBA guys. How many of them have justified that type of outlay? Not many. Not any, maybe even.
Yeah, none of these have worked out recently. Just what you said brought up this quote.
The last one that worked out was probably what, AD, and that's different, and that's also because they had LeBron in place.
Yeah, and again, yeah, and AD's a kind of a weird player where when he is healthy, he really does look like a top 5 player, and probably still the best defensive player in the league when healthy.
It's tough for him that he's looked really good, and unfortunately, Nikola Jokic does not care.
Yeah, but no, the what you were saying reminds me of in Rounders when he walks in at the end and he's like, I see all these people, these squares at the table,
yeah,
short stack and long odds against them, all their outs gone, one last card can help them. That's kind of the situation that you're talking about, right? Like you want to leave yourself options, you want to leave multiple outs. I also think what you brought up is like we always think about it like they need that last piece, they need that that people think of it as like a silver bullet if they just get that star wing. And I think people, to your point, underestimate just how rare it is for one player to be that difference. People thought that might be it I probably thought that was going to be it for Malcolm Brogdon, right? And maybe if they had Udoka, that would have been the case. There's very few players that are actually silver bullets, and I think that thinking also, it's like if the Knicks had Jaylen Brown, they'd have beat the Heat and probably win the championship. Yeah, but I think that good organizations will view it as fluid situations that are constantly evolving. Next year, they might discover some other weakness, right? The Knicks might discover some other weakness, or next year they might, quickly might blow up and you're in a different cap situation because you have to pay him 25 or he walks for nothing, right? Who knows? Or maybe next year, RJ's value increases so much. There's all of these things. And you can't take too much, I think, from any one playoff series. And I think the mindset of we just need this one piece, we're one piece away.
That's what Minnesota did last year, by the way. Minnesota, they lost to Memphis, and Memphis obviously they went on to lose to the Warriors, but they were more of a contender last year for sure than they were this year. And Minnesota in that series, they got destroyed on the glass, absolutely crushed on the glass. And so their takeaway was, if we just fix our issue on the glass, we'll be good to go. So they trade for Rudy Gobert, who is one of the league's best, obviously, defensive players, but also one of the best defensive rebounders in the league. Lo and behold, it did not fix everything, and they were not a good defensive rebounding team this year. So, it's very, very important to get proofs of concept before you make big splashes.
And it's also the game is much more complex. There's there's things we didn't see get exposed that are probably on the Knicks roster by even Eric Spoelstra, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might come up in future series, right? So you need to build a complete roster with that in mind. To your point, the other thing I want to ask you quickly on the Jaylen Brown thing, do you think his value is impacted. It sounds like you don't, but we saw Kyrie Irving for being Kyrie Irving. He only got fetched at first. People have made this comparison. Jaylen Brown is not quite at like saying exactly those things, but he had the Neesmith sneaker, the Neesmith sneakers that he spelled wrong. He's had some things that he said that are a little bit, controversial or
Yeah, he had the
whatever.
weird Kanye take and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that impacts his value at all? One, I guess you say no in terms of his trade market value, but two, also, is that something you think the Knicks or any team should be concerned about?
I don't think it does. If we just look back, like Kyrie Irving had to do so much fucking stupid shit to get to the point where his value was as low as it was. Like we can, and like again, the trade market has changed so much from what it was for stars to what it is now.
I mean,
But
even
like,
Kawhi only cost one for DeRozan
right,
went, but like that,
right,
compare that to now, right? Yeah.
right. But like Kyrie when he got traded to Boston, that was not a nothing trade. Like Isaiah Thomas was seen as a legitimate. I mean, he was awesome for a couple of years with Boston. Before that, they got the 8th overall pick in that draft. They got Jay Crowder, who was like a highly coveted 3-and-D guy at the time. Like they got pretty solid value for Kyrie Irving. So that was seen. And then obviously we know Brooklyn, they go all in. Yeah, obviously it's Kevin Durant was the prize, but like they went all in to get Kyrie, right? Like they definitely were aggressive about that. And like I think his value was very high for a long time, despite all of the weird and stupid and fucking annoying things that he does. Like Jaylen Brown is not to me. You can argue this pretty pretty easily that Kyrie Irving has been a pretty disastrous teammate and kind of team influencer aside from the time he spent with LeBron James. Like aside from that, the level of success his teams have had are not necessarily commensurate with their talent level. Like you look at that Boston team that he was on the year before he left in 2018-19, they underperformed their talent level significantly. And that's not entirely on Kyrie, but it does say something that they replace him with a lesser player who was on his last legs, quite literally, the next year in Kemba Walker, and they were a significantly better team. You know, um, that does say something about him. And I think Al Horford on that team. I think he left that summer too. That Kyrie left. He went to Philly. So like, it's not just him, but I think there's something to be said for that. I think Jaylen Brown is different in the sense that whatever your issues are with Jaylen Brown, it's very hard to say that he has been a negative influence on on the teams that he's been on, that he suppresses talent around him in a variety of ways. I don't think that's true. I do think like some of his, like you talked about some of the off court and things and all that stuff, like they're questionable. I don't think they're nearly as weird or as potentially destructive as the stuff Kyrie has done. Like to my knowledge, Jaylen Brown hasn't ever just like gone AWOL in the middle of a fucking pandemic to go hang out with his sister at her birthday party. Like I don't know. So I don't think Jaylen Brown is viewed as such, and I don't think he should be. But I do think that's something that teams trading for him should be
Well, I mean,
cognizant of, and maybe like that's one of the reasons, quite honestly, why I am hesitant to trade for somebody like Jaylen Brown because, um, you know, uh, he's who knows what can happen when you trade for a guy and you sign him to a new contract. Maybe maybe this is him on his best behavior in a lot of
yeah,
ways, right? Like because he's supermax eligible, right? Because he made All NBA this year. He's entering a contract year. I think they can extend him this offseason if I'm not mistaken. And so, um, you know, it's just I'd be very, very weary of trading a bunch of value for Jaylen Brown.
yeah. And I mean, I'm also just the team that came to mind actually when I was thinking about his trade values. Like, there's one team that could benefit a lot from adding a star wing. They have a star point guard. They have a defensive player of the year, stretch 4 or 5, whatever you want to call it, Jaren Jackson Jr. But this is a team that we can debate how good Dylan Brooks actually is, but they are willing to let him go for nothing under no circumstances is he going to be back, right? You saw another issue with Ja, right? I don't want to get into that. I think I've heard some interesting arguments on both sides about Ja's behavior. But the point is, this is clearly a team that is going to prioritize getting the locker room in a better place. And so, on the other hand, on one hand, they have the chips to push in for Jaylen Brown, and he probably would make like Jaylen Brown, John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., especially if they can hold on to someone like Steven Adams or something. You know, that team has real, has a puncher's chance, no matter what you think about Ja. But I do wonder if a team like that maybe sees some of the off court stuff and has second thoughts, even though it would objectively make them a much better team.
Yeah, Memphis they're definitely an interesting situation. I think a Jaylen Brown trade for them might make sense because of what you talked about, but like it introduces an interesting dynamic into the team, right? With, like you mentioned, with all of the stuff that has gone on with Ja off the floor, and like obviously, look, Jaylen Brown, whatever his issues, they're not that. But like, it's
but
like
I'm talking about creating a mature, locker room presence where it's like it's not just a guy who's there who makes your team better, but somebody who can bring leadership to a team that probably needs it, right? I mean, Steven Adams, as good as he seems to be more of a lead by example type. Whatever it is, they're missing something, and from that standpoint, someone who can not just like not make Ja's issues worse, but probably someone who can mentor him, right, and help him stay focused and continue to improve on the court and those kind of things.
Is this where you tell me Randle can be that guy for them?
I actually have had that thought because he's been that guy in the locker room. I think he's a great fit. Have I said this? Maybe I've said this on the Discord or Twitter or something. I think he's a great fit next to Jaren Jackson. That's like one guy I would love to pair him with on the Knicks but that was not the intended segue. I was thinking more about Jaylen Brown's. But separately, that is something I could see happening because whatever you want to say about Randle's sometimes antics on the court, his work ethic and like the mindset he's developed since coming into New York, and even his relationships with younger teammates have been praised. So,
well, we have traded a power forward to them before who went on to have great success with the Grizzlies. So,
similarly shaped and compared to Randle. So yeah.
That's always such a weird comparison to me though, because I'm just like Julius is way more athletic than Zach Randolph was. Also, like not a low post player at all in the same way that Zebo was. But no, like, are we sure is Jaylen Brown a good leader?
That's my point, right? Like I like even if you want to say the off court stuff, like you said, he hasn't been shown to be super detrimental yet. Although I will say that this is a team where Mazzulla is basically admitted to losing the locker room. And
it's a crazy thing that he admitted, by the way.
Yeah, and so you can give him a fair share of blame for that. But Jaylen Brown is on that team, so you cannot say that he's never been present in a situation where something like that has happened. You can no longer say that. So I'm not saying that means that he was the cause of it, but I am saying that he was there where maybe a guy like Jimmy Butler keeps that team from falling apart, or maybe not, right? Clearly, Jimmy Butler didn't do that in Minnesota, but like those guys who can galvanize and maybe get a guy like Ja to reach his potential, Jaylen Brown probably isn't. But yeah. And then while we're talking about it, I just want to note, for everything that we're probably going to talk about with Randle, I will note that he looked more athletic than I've seen him since he broke his leg probably in LA, to be honest. Like the number of tomahawk dunks he threw down this year, and he looked more. I'm sure you'd agree. Like even after he got hurt, he was. That's probably why I was so frustrated with his effort on defense. But he looks like athletically on a different level, which does change for me the conversation around a little bit.
Yeah, the Randle thing is just. I don't know. I really don't even know. I hate talking about him constantly because it's it feels like we're just gonna have the same fucking conversations that we did last summer, and I don't think they should be the same. I think they need to be very different conversations. Not to say that I want to keep him, but I think there's a difference between there's a difference between you need to trade a guy versus where you're trading him for, last year was absolutely one of the worst years of his career. This is arguably the best year of his career. But I think like if the Knicks can get value, like they need to trade Randle for actual value. And what their goals are in a Randle trade are they can range, right? Do you just want to get future draft capital? Do you want to get back a player? Or are you willing to attach picks with him to upgrade at a position? Are you, do you want to try and mix and match both so that you can still stay competitive in the short term, but maybe improve your asset stash to help your long term goals? Like, there's a lot of ways they can go, but they need to trade him for value. They can't just dump him to dump him. And Memphis is an interesting position because I think they definitely underperformed this year. Clearly, like they feel that way. That release they had on Dylan Brooks said plenty of it. I don't know what is in store for them next year because like we literally don't know, right? Like
Ja could be suspended for
yeah,
40
we
games.
don't
He could be
right.
suspended,
We have no idea what's going to happen with Ja. We, Steven Adams missed the entire end of the season. I would assume he's going to make a full recovery, but we don't know. And he's big guys. Sometimes when they get lower body injuries, that can really derail their career. So we don't know. Jaren Jackson Jr. He was really healthy this year. He hasn't been the paragon of health through his career, but they're young and they do still have a bunch of upside. Like like Ja, JJJ, if depending on how you feel about
Bane.
various guys, yeah, Bane, various guys they've drafted. Other than those guys, like I really like John Conchar on their team. He's not a young player necessarily, but like he's a good player, right? Zaire Williams, I would believe that they probably still have not closed the book on what he can become.
Santi Aldama has been.
Yeah, LaRavia, Santiel Dama. They've got a variety of guys. Who's the big fat guy they have that I really like? Kenneth Lofton Jr. He's a fun player.
I thought you meant
like,
Marc Gasol. I was like, bro, he's not there anymore.
But like, it does feel like they need something. Does Julius bring that to them? Do the Knicks? Is there a trade there that the Knicks would make that makes sense?
Well, they're not sending Bane, and then after that, it's basically picks. There's not a player that they could send that's equal value unless they're like really done with Ja, but they're not doing that.
And the Knicks, honestly, I don't even know if it doesn't even make any sense for the Knicks.
Yeah, that's true. Not a great pairing with Brunson, and they clearly they haven't taken too many guys with. Fair or not, there are question marks around Ja. I know there's a whole conversation that's happened around there, but
that conversation is very, very stupid, and I think Chuck summed it up very nicely on Inside NBA.
I mean, I think, yeah, and I've heard smart people on the other side, people you respect a lot, also have a different opinion. So I can kind of see both sides. I guess the point is, there's
like Ashley Nicole Moss.
No, I do not mean like that. Happy to. Well, I don't want to. Sorry, I don't want to say anything bad about anyone. But what I will say is, but there's the point is, like, if the Knicks make a Randle trade, the question is, would you just dump him for a pick package? You've just mentioned this, right? That stars are very overvalued right now. So I think that would apply to Julius Randle. There's so many people who just think his value is in the dirt. He has the value of something like a DeJounte Murray. He's on a pretty good deal. He's made 2 All-NBA teams in the last 3 years. Like, he's not, like, whatever you think his fit problems are, NBA executives, I guarantee, are looking at him like a star. But it's either a pick package or, like, because there's, like, Memphis is a team where there's no player that fits as, like, the young, promising piece. I guess that would be the centerpiece. Because they're not trading Bane. So
would you do this if the Grizzlies called you up and they were like, all right, we'll give you Luke Kennard and Brandon Clark. You give us, and we'll attach 2 or 3 unprotected first round picks for Julius Randle.
Personally, I would do that.
I would do that.
I would do that in a heartbeat. I don't know that they would. You said Luke Kennard and Brandon Clark's pretty important to them.
He is, but he also ruptured his Achilles, so he's probably not going to play much next year either. And he's probably not going to play much next year.
I would have some, yeah, that's true, and I would have some qualms or reservations. Luke Kennard's a really good player, excellent shooter, which obviously the Knicks need. Little limit on defense. You like that he can kind of create things, but Evan Fournier's body is probably not what it used to be, and he's had a decline to his game. But there is some blame to be said that like a guy with his strengths as like a secondary creator and movement shooter who probably thrives in a more motion oriented offense. I don't know that Kennard would translate as well. And we've seen him struggle in other places where he couldn't fit. Like, it was a mixed bag in LA. I think like he's looked. I enjoyed what I saw of him in Memphis. But it's if that's the centerpiece, it's like. But I mean, if you're getting 2 or 3 unprotected first and 2 guys with some upside, you worry about that later. And we can't just keep saying no to players because Tibbs isn't going to use them right. At some point, you have to look at the implications of that.
Yeah. I would like, to me, where I'm at with Julius is like, I just don't think there's a world where the Knicks can be a contender with him on board. So any trade to me that is a plus value is probably worth doing. And it can be, again, it can be in a variety of different ways. But as long as you're not, if he, like, I totally, I am with you in the sense of like, I just can't understand the people that think we're trading him at some horrific low point value. Or that it's just like a neutral contract and just getting out of the deal has value. Like, no, you can't just get out of the deal. Let me last offseason, if you just don't give me we'll just give you an expiring contract for him, I might have done it. I would have done it. What do I mean? I would have done it.
But I would go even a step further, and I would say, like, even if it's just like 4 picks and trash players just for salary filler, I don't think they do that. Maybe 4 picks is going a bit far, but like if it's a few picks, that's a good pick package, but there's not a good player coming back. Like Luke Kennard might be the low end of that because this organization hasn't done much to convince me that they would be willing to take a step back right now.
I think they would do it if they thought if they could parlay some of those picks and their picks that they have into a guy. Like then I think it's different. But I agree. Like I have a hard time believing
that would happen before the next season because if they have to actually be worse on the court, that's not something they're showing a willingness.
The only way that's feasible, and I'm not totally against this idea, but I do think it carries an inherent amount of there's a lot of risk involved, is if they're like internally, they look at it and they say, you know what? We drafted Obi Toppin 8 for a reason. We believe that he can be a starting power forward. Like, let's get the picks. Let's cash in on Randle, and let's give him a shot, and we'll see how it goes, and we can move on from there. Like, do I think that's likely? I don't think so. But I don't think it's like the craziest idea in the world. They did fucking take the guy 8th overall, and I still believe that they are high on him internally, at least in the front office. I don't think Tibbs is. I mean, based on how he's used him, but like I do think the front office is still high on Obi Toppin. So if that's the way they went, again, it's not likely to me, and I do think it carries a lot of risk because this is the thing that we need to recognize with Julius is like there's a difference between saying he sucked ass in the playoffs. He did. He's terrible in the playoffs. Absolute garbage. There's a difference between saying that versus saying what he is in the playoffs makes him also trash in the regular season, or like his numbers were all inflated, don't mean anything. Like I don't agree with that at all. He was genuinely great in the regular season, and he's been genuinely great in the regular season twice in the last 3 years.
And it's in a different way than it was the first time, right?
Yeah, so. Yeah, and yeah, do I think that even in the regular season you can kind of see the issues at hand that come to the fore in the playoffs? Absolutely. Like you see that at the end of games, end of quarters, whatever. But he helps you win a lot of ball games over an 82-game regular season. So if you're trading him out and you're just like, we believe in Obi, you've got to understand that there's a pretty big risk there. And like, it's not obviously not a 1-for-1 trade, right? You're not trading out Randle, replacing with Obi and expecting Obi to be like, okay, go be 25, 10 and 5, right? That's not what you're expecting. What theoretically, I would assume you'd be expecting is, okay, with Randle gone, Brunson can do a little bit more. RJ can do a little bit more. Quickly can do a bit more. Grimes can do a bit more. Obi can do more. And like that collective rising of tides replaces Julius on the aggregate. But like, that's a risk. That's a very real risk. And it's a risk that I think we know that they've operated in a fashion that indicates they want to win ball games. They want to try to be competitive year on year. And if
incrementally
you
get better, right?
yeah, and if you trade out Randall and take that risk, there's a chance you're not better. But if you want an example of a team that maybe benefited from losing a guy last year, not replacing with anything, it's maybe Miami. Like they lost. And I know PJ Tucker's not Julius Randle, so I want to be very, very clear. I'm not saying like it would be as like just replacing PJ Tucker is the same as replacing Julius Randle. Not saying that, but like you can see, I think, and actually with Hero out, this even comes out even more. I think you see with those guys gone how it's benefited certain other players in the team. And maybe during the season, the regular season, that was a struggle, right? Like they did not have a good regular season. But now in the playoffs, maybe that's starting to pay off. Like it's not obviously a 1-for-1 example. It's not a clean example, but it's the idea of like sometimes taking a hit in terms of losing individual talent actually can help you in a collective way. Am I totally sold on that with Julius? I'm not, to be honest. And that's from somebody who wants to trade him, but like you can't just pretend that like just because I want to trade him, I'm not going to pretend that like any trade is a great idea and has no downside risk. And like be realistic in any business. If you show exponential growth one year, that's great. You're going to get a lot of fucking praise for it. But if the next year you decline a little bit, you're going to get criticism for it. And it's not just going to be like, well, if you zoom out, they're still way better off. No, it's going to be like, well, what the fuck happened? So if let's say next year they trade out Randall and we do like they just, Obi gets more minutes, whatever. Let's say they go
Play-in, right?
43-39 and they're in the play-in and they get the 7th seed or something and they make the playoffs or they lose in round 1. Do you like they're going to get criticized for that and they're going to be under a bit more pressure than they are right now. So like these are parts of the job that it's easy enough for me and you to theorize like, well, what if, if you replace Obi and this, I think they could be just as good. Yeah, it's cool to say that, but that's a real life consideration, real world risk they are taking that we just don't have to really worry about when we talk about this stuff.
Yeah, it's not a fantasy basketball or whatever, as many people like to say in that situation.
It's not 2K.
It's interesting to me. I want to go back specifically in this context because you mentioned Keldon Johnson before. I personally don't think like he had a career year. I don't think that San Antonio is going to be willing to move on from him. He also, with Murray, there's always been a little bit of kind of the antics that I've just never seen with Keldon Johnson on that level. So I think he probably is a little bit better of a fit there. Let me throw this to you, though. It is widely expected. We've always said that the best player, like Randall's a tough fit because you ideally want him next to someone who can both protect the rim, but also space the floor. I do not think this player is going to be able to space the floor at least efficiently as a rookie, but they're widely expected to take a player who not only fits that mold, but is a lot more. Now, you probably want him rolling to the rim, and that might be a little bit not great of a fit. But Randall would also afford the opportunity to not have to have Wembanyama, defend in the low post, defend guys like Joel Embiid. No one's defending him, but like defend some of the tougher guys, not just from the standpoint of him having success, but even the physical toll it takes while his body is still developing. Do you think Randall might be an attractive target for the Spurs? Especially if they, for a guy like Keldon Johnson, maybe, let's say.
I would. Actually, for Keldon. Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. Do I think they do it? Maybe not. Although, like, let's be realistic. I don't think that the Spurs are. I don't know if they don't care. They probably don't give a shit if they make the playoffs or not. But I also think they're done with like the tanking time. Yeah, they're done with that. And so, like, I'll throw this at you. Let's say they're like, okay, we've got our guy, right? We got Wemby, we got the generational prospect, we like our other young guys. They have a shit ton of cap space this summer. Okay. So let's say they trade Keldon. They've got those Atlanta picks, right?
Yeah.
So let's say they do Keldon and the Atlanta pick. So they just do Keldon and then the remaining pieces of the Murray trade. So those picks and the swap they have. Let's say they give that to New York for Randle. And then they sign Fred VanVleet. Like that is an interesting situation. Like I agree. You're right. I mean, on its face, it seems ridiculous. But like we've seen Pop before, and I know there was a lot more going on with the Kawhi trade than just this. But like, take a guy like DeRozan, right? He was comfortable taking a guy like DeRozan who had issues. Not a great defensive player, obviously, bad defensive player, quite frankly. Consistently choked in the playoffs, like questions about his mental toughness the deeper you go in the season. Take a player like that in return for Kawhi because he didn't have interest in tanking. And I know, or like rebuilding or whatever. And like they kind of did embrace that for the last couple of years, but I doubt that that's what they want to do moving forward. And so, like, honestly, if you add Randall for Keldon and a couple of picks, right, and then you sign Fred VanVleet outright in free agency, honestly, there's an outside chance. Maybe I'm even underselling it, but there's a chance that you're a playoff team next year. And like I think
You
they
have a
would,
lot of potential on defense. Keldon's
yeah,
part of that, so you lose that. But the Sohan, I guess Sohan would not be a clean fit with Randall, but like he'd be perfect as the backup change of pace guy. Pop might be more willing to go to like a small ball lineup, right?
yeah,
And
at
with
times,
DeRozan, who was known as an ISO heavy player, who some have actually compared Randall to in the sense of, DeRozan obviously struggled more in the playoffs at times in Toronto. Pop helped him transform his game. He was able to display much more creative passing.
yeah, his
And
passing went way up in San Antonio, right?
maybe that's something where Popovich could be the coach to unlock some more of that in Randall. And if Randall turns into that kind of passer, I mean, that could be a steal for San Antonio.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting scenario for the Knicks because it's like, you know, I actually think if they made that trade, right? Like, I actually think it's funny. I still don't know if Obi would start because
Yeah,
I think Tibbs would actually embrace, like
Hart
he
would
would
start.
embrace. Yeah, and I'm fine with that because I do think like they have to evolve as a team, and I think there's value to trying. Like I think you will get more. And I know it's crazy to say this because of Brunson having the season he just had in the playoff run he just had, but I think you'll get more from Brunson. I think you'll get more from RJ. I think you'll get more from Quickly and Grimes if you do play a little bit more of like a modern style, right? Where the floor is more spread and your four is more of a wing than like a true four. I think there's value there. You're also going to have to change kind of like where you're drawing value on the margins on the floor. You're not going to be an offensive rebounding juggernaut, probably. You're probably going to have to play faster. So you might be a higher turnover team, but you're hoping the pace can create more quality shots, which raises your kind of your effective field goal percentage, which you were gaming this year by winning the possession battle. So maybe you have to evolve in a different way as a team. I do think it's worth considering, and I think it's necessary to consider because I really do believe that that is a necessary evolution for this team and franchise take. There's a risk, again, like anything else, trading Randall, firing Tibbs. Like there's a risk in in doing those things, and there's a risk in trying to change your kind of identity as a team. But I do think it's a risk worth taking. And I do like Keldon. I know that he's had his metrics are like all over the place because all the San Antonio stuff is very weird. But I still believe in that dude as a player, and I think he's a really good player. And like honestly, I think it'd just be fun, man. Like I think like having Keldon and RJ and Quickly and Grimes, Brunson, Mitch, like I think that's like a fun fucking roster. I think it's a fun team. I think they'll really get the Garden rocking in a way that's, not that the Garden wasn't rocking this year, but I think that like they could play a style that would really be embraced in a different way too. So I don't know. I'd be into that trade. I do think like you can fairly argue that maybe that's trading a bit low on Randall, but that's actually like a fair value there, or at least it's closer to fair value, right? Where you're like, okay, we're getting back an actual young player with talent who's locked in on a good contract, and we're getting picks that we can move down the line in the eventual star trade that maybe you have to make at some point. So yeah, I'd be into that for sure.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that while Keldon Johnson struggled from three this year, for his career, he's a 36.3-point shooter. He's a year removed from shooting 40% from three.
Kind of low
Um,
volume, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I mean, this year he averaged 6 a game. six 3-pointers, 6.5 3-pointers a game. Last year was 5.3 3-pointers per game.
So he's ticking up.
Yeah, and like he averaged 9.3s attempted per 100. Last year it was 8. For comparison, Quentin Grimes was most of the year around 9. I think he ticked up to like 10 maybe by that last season stretch, but it's not like Keldon's low volume. And that, as part of it, like I would imagine also, last year, the year before last, or sorry, this year, right, this season that just happened, 90% of his threes were assisted. The year before was 97. So I would imagine there's probably a slight disparity in terms of his pull-up shooting and his spot-up shooting. Like most players, probably a little bit better. So he'd probably be asked to do a little bit. He'd probably have a healthier shot diet playing off of Brunson, RJ, and at times even quickly than if he's asked to create all the time. So and take a lot of pull-up threes. And the Knicks are going to surround him with more talent. So there's reason to believe his efficiency, which wasn't terrible to begin with. He was still 55 true shooting. It's not like DeJounte, who was low 50s his whole time. There's reason to believe it would tick up.
Yeah, and I think one thing to mention with Keldon, so if you look at his usage by year, rookie year 17.4, 19.2, 21.3, and then this year 27.9, like probably above what he should be at. In terms
at least
of
right now, for a 23-year-old, that's perfectly what you should do if you're San Antonio. And
right.
Maybe he can one day, but right now where he is, if you're worried about him being most efficient,
If the goal is to win basketball games and that's your primary goal, like he probably shouldn't be at 28 usage. But like if you can bring that down a little bit, there's no reason to think that he'll be some garbage efficiency player. For his career is 56.5 true shooting. His splits for his career are 46.8 from the field, 36.3 from 3, and 75.2 from the free throw line, 53.1 EFG. Those are all above average for wing numbers, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe not the 3-point shooting, but like EFG, field goal percentage, whatever. Like this is a very interesting player, and his on-off, like his on-court and on-off splits just are all over the place, and I think that speaks to like the weird situation San Antonio has been in for most of his career. Although this is like really the 1 year they committed to the tank, but like he's been a really interesting player to me for a while, and like it'd be fun bring the Kentucky boys back together again. Keldon and Quickly did play together in college, so that would be fun. But yeah, like I like Keldon a lot. I think he's a fun player, and I think he's an interesting player that you could maybe bet on the upside for. And from San Antonio's point of view, if they do want to win ball games, you're not cashing in all your chips, and you're not even totally like, it's not like you don't have flexibility to make other moves as well. So I think that could be appealing for them.
Yeah. But anyway, I also understand there's a lot of people who think that there's an overreaction to Randle. And so let me ask you this, and we probably spent a lot of time talking, but it's one of the bigger issues this season. It's one of the bigger, he's the best or second best player, whoever you want to ask. I have a strong opinion on that, but he is one of the most important players on the team. So it's a worthwhile convo. You said that you see him capping the ceiling, just his presence. Obviously it raises the floor, but it caps the ceiling a bit for this Knicks team. What would you have to see? Is there anything he can do or display that would change that impression in your mind? And, or what is like the one thing where it's like, this is the thing I cannot, or, there's multiple things, but what, is there anything that could change your perception of him, being a ceiling capper?
Not until the playoffs. I mean, I just, the way he plays, like he's a very big ball stopper. He doesn't make quick decisions. He misses swing passes all the time, which is very, very frustrating. And it actually is like why his game 2 against Miami stood out so much, because he hit so many swing passes. He made so many quick decisions. It was like, holy shit, like if this guy can be this guy all the time, we're going to fucking win the championship or something. Like, but he hasn't been that guy consistently. And I think those games are the exception to the rule. And until I see that improve and play better in the playoffs, like I just don't know. I don't think it's an overreaction after a second consecutive playoffs. And we were told last year, right? It's a lot of the same people that are like, "Oh, you're overreacting to this Julius performance." a lot of the same people were arguing for like, hey, look, like he cratered in the playoffs last time because we didn't have a true point guard that could command the attention of the defense. The reason he sucked ass last year is we didn't have a true floor general, a true point guard. He had that this year. Now you want to fucking sit there and you got people telling me, oh, well, Mitch doesn't space the floor and Mitch doesn't have ball skills. And don't fucking try and put this on Mitch. Give me a break, man. Like, I'm sorry. The Mitch conversation after the series has been really fucking weird because I don't think he played a great series. Obviously, he wasn't as good as he played against Cleveland, but I didn't come away from that series being like Mitch is a huge anchor on us. Like he's such a fucking problem for why we didn't win this series. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if your all NBA guy plays like fucking dog shit, I don't want to hear about like the like 7 usage center who isn't spacing the floor. I don't want to hear about, oh, Quickly didn't shoot well. I don't want to hear about Quentin Grimes couldn't buy a bucket. Oh, Josh Hart, the spacing. Like, you need your difference makers, your primary guys to be difference makers. And guess what? Brunson showed up. He showed the fuck up. RJ took a step up, especially in that Miami series. I told game 6 was not good from him, right? Flat out. But I thought he took a step up. Like he took a step up after having a pretty miserable regular season. And that says a lot about his character, but it also is just, that he delivered what you expected him to. And, maybe Quickly also got hurt at the end of game 3. So he didn't play the last 3 games in the series. Grimes, it is what it is. But point is though, like I don't want to hear about all the other mitigating circumstances of Julius's performance when he played the way he did. I'm sorry. Like, you don't get to have that excuse when you play like one of the worst players in the league.
What about the
least
injury?
Efficient players? Come on, man. Really? Did you watch him move around that series and you were like, it's the injury?
I'm covering all our bases.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I like, if you want to say, and you know what? Everybody's fucking injured right now. Brunson was injured. Grimes came back from an injury. I don't hear these same people talking about like, oh, well, maybe his jump shot was off because his fucking ankle was hurt. No, who the fuck's saying that?
Grimes needs to shoot better. I think what you posted, I was surprised, right? I think you posted the difference in shooting splits. It was interesting.
Yeah, and to be clear, those splits are like they're not huge sample sizes, so you can argue the variance.
But Randle,
they speak to something. Yeah.
Randle was 57 true shooting, which for him
with Grimes
series was and he went to 44. Which clearly, so if you want to make an excuse for Randle, you could say, well, he was impacted by the spacing too.
I think the more telling one is the Brunson one, because I think it's fair to say like everybody views Brunson as having been like a very steady hand during that series, right? The only steady hand in some ways. Even his efficiency cratered without it was Grimes. With Grimes, he was like 68 true shooting, and then without him, he was like 55.5, which is like, look, to be clear, that's still good, but you're talking about superstar versus good. Like when there's alignment with like, it's literally all those guys. It's RJ, it's Brunson, and it's Randle, where all those guys played way better, were more efficient with Grimes on the floor than without him. It speaks to something. Now, here's my issue with like just the specific Randle part of it is, yes, he scored more efficiently. The defense was terrible no matter who was on the floor with him.
That's why like people are like, what about Quickly? He was a complete no-show. Amazingly, as poorly as Emmanuel Quickly played on offense, the team remained one. It was 8 points better, which you can say small sample if it didn't exist for his whole career. And 2, people just want to ignore the defense. Like, to me, you said what gap, what would have to change, I asked you that. I do think his decision making could matter a little bit less if he was in a lower volume role, right? If he didn't have the ball as much in his hands. I think that's what's happened with Wiggins. He was a lot of the same issues were issues with Wiggins. One, I think is a little bit better environment, but like Wiggins has had a very, I almost said Riggins, right? Tim Riggins. Wiggins had the Tim Riggins role.
We need to drink more beer on this team.
Yeah, Texas forever. Wiggins' role was simplified in Golden State, where he's either attacking downhill or spotting up, or if he has a mismatch, he'll post up and he's allowed to do some of those things, right? But you've simplified a lot of his decision making. I think the Randle that role could be interesting. The other thing, though, that's non-negotiable to your point is the effort on defense. And it's laughable to me to people that will blame Mitch, right? Mitch got bodied by Bam on the glass. Why do you think he was out of position so much? because his job has been to contest shots. And that's fine. You say, well, but then there is a designated rebound guy who is not getting rebounds. The other, like, Randle isn't alone in that blame, and Spoelstra had interesting ways to make that happen. But that's the big difference that I think people don't get is like you're ignoring half the floor, and it's ironic because a lot of the people who bring that up are like, this team is built around defense. People focus too much on offense. So can we talk about Julius's defense then, or is it only that you can only criticize quickly for offense, but you can't criticize Randle, and you can only praise Randle for defense, but you can't praise quickly, or you can't praise RJ, right? Like RJ wasn't great on defense against Miami. He was still, the effort was good.
And that's actually the entire point where it's like I don't expect RJ to necessarily be some like fucking. I don't need him to be Michael Cooper. Like I don't need him to be Tony Allen. I don't need it, but I need him to just
improve on the glass a little bit. That was the problem, but the effort was there. It wasn't an effort.
Yeah, I need the effort, and actually towards the end of the series, he was rebounding better. I think he understood that, like, especially after Game 4, I think he made it a point, or at least consciously, whatever it was, he rebounded better after that point in the series. Maybe it was too little, too late, and you know what? That's a good learning experience for him. That, like, hey, look, like, maybe in the regular season you can get away with like not competing on the glass for a few games, but in the playoffs, the margins are so fine, especially against a team as experienced and as disciplined as Miami, that you won't get away with that, and that can cost you. And I'm okay with that. Like, that's a good, valuable lesson for him to learn, right? That's fine. And you asked me a question. You're asking me, right? Like, we're talking about like what would Randle have to do, right? To like, and I've always said this, it's not about shooting to me, right? It's not about the numbers. Forget the shooting numbers. There's other things you can always consistently do to win ball games. And I want to play this clip. This is from Michael Malone. He was talking about Jamal Murray. This is after Game 2. So I want to play this real quick. Let me make sure this is up. All right, here we go.
That he still appears to be engaged on the defensive end.
Well, he was one of our defensive players of the game, to your point, Vinny. 10 boards. He had 13 contested shots tonight. He had 4 steals. But that's what you have to do. Like, there are going to be nights or quarters for Jamal. It could be a quarter, it could be a half, it could be 3 quarters where your shot's not going. But in the playoffs, you can't be a specialist. Specialists don't play in the playoffs. You got to find a way to impact the game. And he did that tonight. And he understands that. And, we all know one thing about Jamal, man. Like, he just has to see one go in. He got a little mid-range pull-up to go in, kind of looked up to the heavens, and that's all he needs. And after that, he's shooting into a hula hoop. So I'm proud of him. But that's the challenge. My challenge to Jamal is don't be just a scorer. He's going to be an all-star in this league. And for him to do that, it's got to be scoring, playmaking, rebounding, defending every single night. And he has that within him.
Well, Michael, for all the
so I wanted to play that because that is exactly what I think about Julius Randle. You don't need to score every single night to have an impact. But what you do need to do is do all that other shit. And you can do all that other shit. You have all the physical talent to do it. You have, not just the physical talent, but the capabilities. Like, we've seen him have games like that. We've seen him, when he gives a fuck on defense, he can be a nightmare defender. Like, I mean that. Like,
for other teams.
Yeah. And you can argue that when he's locked in, he might be the Knicks' best one-on-one perimeter defender. He really has, like,
he was against Atlanta, by the way, of all the things.
Yeah, like you see that with him. And so, forget, again, it's not about the shooting numbers. Yeah, they'd be great if they'd be better. But when you don't control the shit you can control, then none of that shit matters. Like, it really doesn't. Actually, what it does is it makes the threshold so much higher for you offensively, right? Like, and this is why when Quickly has struggled from the field, when Grimes has struggled from the field, when, like, those two very specifically, when those guys have struggled from the field, I'm not super critical of them most of the time because they're not making destructive plays and they're controlling the things they can control. They're still helping you on the margins. And so they can overcome when they have bad shooting performances, and the team can overcome when they have bad shooting performances. And when Julius gives a shit, The team can overcome his bad shooting performances. If you want an example of that in the playoffs, go watch game 1 again against Cleveland. He didn't shoot well from the field. And there were people criticizing him for that. And I actually didn't. I thought I called that. I said he had a good game. He had a flat out good game. And like that to me is that's what I'm fucking talking about with Julius. You have games like that. I think I don't even know what he shot. I'm almost positive he was like 6 of 21. Yeah, 6 of 21.
7 of 20, yeah.
Yeah.
7 of 20, 19 points. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was like not a good shooting performance. But if you just watch that game and block out the shooting numbers, don't look at the box score, you would say that he had a good game. You'd say he flat out had a good game. And like he's capable of that, but he has to bring it consistently. It can't be like, oh, I'm going to have one awesome game and then I'm going to hang out for 3 and then I'll try for a quarter. And then that's bullshit. And like some of the decisions and some of the mistakes he was making against Miami were just really frustrating. Like the one, he had 2 turnovers with Brunson that were the exact same thing, right? Where he's like comes across half court and then casually tosses a pass behind him, which gets picked off and it's an easy bucket the other way. And he doesn't hustle back on defense. Like that's the shit that drives you nuts. And that's the shit that honestly is like, when people say they're done with him, like I get it when I watch those plays. And honestly, those are the plays that get me to the point where I'm at right now, where I'm like, if the Knicks can make a good trade for Julius Randle, I'm all for them doing it, because he's 28 now, and 28 in real life is not old. But 28 in the NBA, like you're fucking set in your ways by that point in a lot of sense. And like how many players have evolved at age 28? And I don't mean just like where you're taking your shots from. I'm talking about like fundamental elements of your game, decision making, effort, those type of things. How many players from age 28 have made substantial improvements in those areas? I would be shocked if there are many, if any.
Yeah,
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I mean, I think there's incremental growth. I thought Carmelo Anthony in New York, I did think he had a much more mature approach than I'm not talking about off the court. I'm just talking about he was in better shape, like those kind of things. It seemed like there was more routine and consistency there. But I think to your point, like a transformation, no, it's very unheard of.
Yeah, and like, it's just really frustrating because I want to sit here and like praise Julius and be thrilled about having him on the team after the season he just had, because it was a great regular season he just had. But for him to cap the season the way he did, and it wasn't just a couple of games against Miami, right? Like we saw he was cratering for pieces of that Cleveland series, games 3 and 4. I mean, honestly, game 2, 3, and 4 against Cleveland, he was terrible. And then, yeah, he looked great in the first half of game 5 against Cleveland. But then, and he looked great when he came back against Miami in game 2. Like, that's the best game of his career. And then after that, it's like, what the fuck? Like, the defense, totally non-existent. The effort on the rebound, totally non-existent. Your shooting and everything goes to shit in a lot of ways. Like, it's just, you got to be better than that when you're in the role that he's in. And if you're not capable of being that guy consistently, then yeah, like I'm sorry, there is a ceiling to that team. Like you look at Miami, right? And you can sit here and you can talk to me about the Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin and fucking Kevin Love and all these guys that are stepping up in various moments. You know why they're fucking playing really well right now? It's because every single game, Jimmy Butler and Bam are producing. They are producing at a consistent level. Those two, like their 2 best guys, are consistently producing all-star caliber play. That's how you win. Like Brunson, I mean, he played at a level beyond even what he did in the regular season. He was fucking awesome.
And it looked like not 100%. So
yeah,
and health-wise.
Yeah, and so for the Knicks, for the Knicks to get to and like, look, I've talked about Tibbs too. Like, I think Tibbs deserves plenty of blame, but I will say this: Miami's offense has been fucking great against Milwaukee, and it's been fucking great against Boston. It was not fucking great against the Knicks. The Knicks did a really good job against them, especially as the series went on. Like, you have to give Tibbs credit for that, even if there's some micros, like the doubles of Jimmy, and we can talk about that. But like, you hold a team.
All in all, you're seeing why that calculus played out, because Boston, because Jimmy's been on fire everywhere else, right? So
right, and so like, when you play at the level they did defensively, that is a credit to Tibbs in a lot of ways. And honestly, it's a credit to Mitch. It's a credit to like the defensive anchors and shit like that. So, and Grimes was spectacular on defense in that series. So like, I think, I will continue to criticize Tibbs and be critical of Tibbs for his rotations in a lot of ways, and I do think that fucked up the offense. But defensively, like, he had a good performance as a coach in that series. But like, and yeah, like, offensively maybe he wasn't all there, but you know what? Sometimes your star needs to give you a margin, and Julius didn't give a shit. He really didn't. He was terrible. And like, aside from one game, I very much struggled to call any of his games good. I mean, and saying they were better than okay, I think, is being generous for any of them. I mean, game 3 and 4 were flat out atrocious.
Disasters,
Yeah, just absolute disasters. Game 6 wasn't a lot better either. But like, it's, I just think I've argued with Tyrese about this, but like, if you told me only one can come back, I'm probably going to take Tibbs over Julius. But like, realistically, both are going to come back, and we'll see how that goes. But like, the Julius Randle experience it's been a hell of a ride. But I am ready to move on if a good trade presents itself. I don't think you'd, and I feel very strongly about this, that it would be wise to just move him for whatever, right? We've talked about that. But like, if there's a good value trade that comes up, I'm all ears.
Yeah, I think to change my stance, I would need to see. I don't think I've seen consistent effort for a season. In 2020, the excuse was he was asked to do literally everything on offense. Last year, didn't see it. This year, he had a smaller role, and he probably tried harder than he did last year. It was a more consistent effort, but there were still too many times. It's one thing I think, there's some mitigating factors, right? Prez has mentioned that on their team, he is the go-get-it rebounder. I don't think they ask him to box out, not because he can't, but because it's a little bit of a waste when you have a guy that big, that strong, that athletic, to use him just on one guy, right? It's the same concept of, some of the best defenders being used more as rovers. Like, just have him go get the ball and use that strength. So some of those things probably need some more context. How many times do you see him not have his hands down when contesting a shot? That's just, it's basic stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's the stuff, to be fair, we ripped on RJ for all season. And the reason that Randall was able to get away with it in the regular season when he didn't do that shit is because his offensive play was it outweighed that. But this is like, when that offensive play goes away, like, then those mistakes become magnified. And
fairly or unfairly, RJ is 23 or 22. There's reason to expect that can change. Like you said,
yeah,
you're setting your
you can change, we can change, we can all change, as my good friend Rocky once said.
But I see no changes. Wake up in the morning. I should have said a different verse there. But moving on from. So I think he can be even good still in a reduced role. I think his ideal role on a championship team is probably the third option. He'd be a really good third option. I think he's like a more, like, just to simplify his decision making. So it's either catch and shoot, get downhill, or if he's posting up, just a very simple read. He's much better attacking from the sides than from the middle of the floor. That is one thing people have brought up, that like him, Brunson, and RJ both seem to be really comfortable from the left side of the floor. I do think RJ and Brunson are much better though when operating. I think they have more versatility there. But I think, to your point, like, if he's going to be that third option, there's no one who's like, if you're going to be that player, if we're going to get someone else to come in and take some of that, more of that decision-making load away from Julius, you have to be adding value on defense, right? I mean, if Jamal Murray, who is the second option on a team, who is a point guard, like, you want to call him the primary ball handler, fine, but he has the ball in his hands a lot, and he's a small guard. If he's going to be held to that standard of impacting the game, even when he's not scoring, I think that's the best player to bring that up with, because I think people would think of him more as a scoring specialist. And you're like, well, how can Murray impact the game if he's not scoring? The fact that he's a coach that's holding him to that standard, that's what you'd like to see from Randall.
And you'd like to see that from Tibbs, by the way, too.
Yeah, that relationship. And I think maybe, people have mentioned it. I think you mentioned this, that like Reggie Bullock was it Reggie Bullock or
it was him and Pinson.
Yeah, and this, like, you can't play for Tibbs unless you defend, except Julius. There's been there's been an entire season where it seemed like no one could hold Julius accountable. And when we hear about people getting more out of him, it seems to be Bryant more than Tibbs. And Tibbs seems to bring that out of other players. So it's a little puzzling that he's like that. I don't want to say a disconnect, but that it leaves something to be desired there. But to me, the answer is like reduce his role. I think it can still work, but there is no getting around the fact that he needs to be more consistent on defense.
Yeah, and if you reduce his role, it actually increases the necessity for him to be a good defender.
Exactly.
And do that consistently. Like it's the biggest thing. So, yeah, I mean, look, like the Tibbs part of it is, I think it's fair to criticize him for not holding Randle accountable at a lot of instances. I will say though, at least in the case of Julius Randle, he's not an easy guy to manage. We know this. Like he can be very volatile emotionally, and I think negotiating that as a coach is tough. Now that's the job. That's quite literally part of your job as an NBA head coach. So I'm not absolving Tibbs of blame, but I do think it's difficult. And is that fair to expect a coach to do that all the time and to deal with a guy like this? I don't know. Maybe it probably depends on how worth it you think Julius's talent level is and how much it deserves, right? Like, because if he was as good as and consistently as good as say like Devin Booker, but he was this volatile like dude who constantly had outbursts and shit like that, you might be a lot more willing and to deal with that. But with Julius, I don't know. I don't know. It's very tough because the level that he produces is so inconsistent, it's so variable. And I think it's just it makes him such a weird and interesting player to discuss in terms of like, how he impacts the Knicks current, like their present, how does he impact their future, short and long term. It's a very interesting dude and a very very strange season that he had at the end of it all. But all right, I think that's a good place to end this here. Stacy, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss before we get out of here?
Yeah. I would like to plug, for those who may not be aware, the Strickland is covering the New York Liberty. So the Liberty got their first win yesterday against the Indiana Fever. And Gigi Spear has a great recap. Matt Miranda covered the first game. Exciting times for Liberty with a couple of big acquisitions, complementing a nice young core. So definitely follow along and follow the Strickland if you like the Liberty.
Yeah. And just want to mention that the show is presented by Bet Online. I'm going to plug myself, so I'm just going to plug all the wonderful work of the Strickland. As you mentioned, all the New York Liberty coverage that we have coming out from Gigi and Matthew also. That's great. And, we also have draft content that's been coming out, even though the Knicks currently don't have a draft pick. I would venture to guess the Knicks will acquire a draft pick. I think they will take somebody this year.
Yeah, we didn't even get to talk about that, man. I got some takes on that too. But you do have your other pod is with the draft guru himself, so I'm sure he talks a lot about that the last pod.
Yeah, we did touch on it. Yeah, I fully expect them to take a draft pick. So familiarize yourself with Stacy's work, who does draft stuff, and Prez, and maybe not Tyrese. Don't familiarize yourself with Tyrese's work. But yeah, there's all kinds of good draft content that we're putting out. I'm sure Prez will start pumping out some draft Strickland content also. So be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, that is our pod for today. I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday.